I don't meet a lot of people through that. A lot of people from Rutgers, but yeah. Cool.
All right, Beth, I put that slide back up and it is 1 o'clock if we want to get started.
We're up to 80 people. I'm briefly, welcome to the afternoon session of our public meeting on a bottle redemption program in New Jersey. I'm Beth Rabbit. I'm moderating the 2 panels we will have this afternoon. There are a few ground rules for those who weren't on the call this morning. I just would like to quickly review them. We're being recorded. The meeting is being recorded. There are still 2 panels left to go. Business perspectives on a bottle redemption program at 1 o'clock and government perspectives at 2 o'clock. We will have the panelists introduce themselves with an introductory statement, and then we will have questions that were developed by the Governor's Plastic Advisory Council members. After the second session that ends at 3 o'clock, there will be a public comment period facilitated by Diane Gard, who is a member of the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection. If you would like to make comments in this public section, you individually must be registered for this meeting in order to provide your comments. And with that, I would like to introduce members of the Business Perspectives panel. We have Mary Ellen Papard, and these are businesses very deliberately that are either affected currently by the law banning some single-use plastic products, or people from businesses who would be impacted if New Jersey should implement a bottle redemption program. So Mary Ellen Papard is the Vice President of the New Jersey Food Council. Megan Daum is the Vice President of Sustainability for the American Beverage Association. And Marilyn Schlossbach is a restaurateur who founded and is in charge of the Maryland Group. So I'd like to start with Mary Ellen Papard. If you could introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for everyone's remarks already today. Mary Ellen Papard, Vice President of the New Jersey Food Council. We are a trade association representing food retailers, convenience stores, and their supplier partners. So that includes the food and beverage manufacturers and distributors. I've represented the Food Council for the past 11 years. I lead our government affairs program, which consists of many different issues, but includes environmental issues and packaging issues. Very happy to be here today. I'll first start off by saying that the Food Council members are very committed to sustainability and working towards a circular economy. I know that's something that we talked a lot about today. However, we are strongly opposed to a bottle deposit system. This would undermine our current comprehensive recycling and litter abatement programs that you've already heard a lot about today. And then a bottle bill also imposes significant operational and hygiene challenges for food retailers. I don't want to repeat what Joanne and some of the others have said about the great work done by the Clean Communities program. I'll just add that we talked a little bit about the litter tax, which is paid by grocers, convenience stores, and other businesses that generate litter generating products. What people don't realize is Food Council members pay more than 50% of the litter tax to support our successful recycling infrastructure. As has been talked about, a bottle bill would disrupt the successful curbside recycling program by diverting these recyclables. And then if the Clean Communities program is negatively impacted, this also, of course, impacts the funds that the municipalities rely upon. One of the key reasons for our members specifically that we are opposed to bottle bills is that they lead to rodent and pest infestation problems. Our food retail members, many of them are multi-state, so they operate in different states and jurisdictions throughout the country, some of which are part of those 10 bottle bill states. And they have reported having to shut down their stores in some of those states due to rat infestations. They go to great lengths to make sure that their stores are safe and hygienic. And this type of bottle bill system would really make it a lot harder to maintain those cleanliness and sanitation standards. They're also onerous for retailers. Our grocers would have to implement a system to accept the containers, train their employees, notify consumers, they sanitize the containers. In some cases, they would have to remodel or renovate parts of the store to set aside a large storage space. And then, of course, maintain and clean the collection machines. It is generally burdensome for both the manufacturers, distributors of the beverage products, and the retailers. And then, of course, there's also the consumer refund mechanism, which is very time consuming and labor intensive. And we are continuing to be challenged by labor shortages. One more point that I will add is that a bottle bill really is a tax on our consumers, on our customers. Many are not going to bring back their containers to recoup their deposits. And if you look at perhaps, let's say, a 10-cent per container were to be enacted, we don't have any actual legislation, but for the sake of the argument, let's say it's 10 cents. You're looking at an additional $2.40 tax per 24 case of containers. So that's really significant, for, especially given the inflation right now. And then some of what we sometimes see, particularly in border states like New Jersey, is that when consumers have to pay higher costs for the same products, some are going to decide to go outside of New Jersey to PA, which does not have a bottle bill. And then we've also seen fraud, of course, in the state with bottle bills. That's been mentioned a little bit today, but it's something that is of concern to our members. They've talked about this, particularly our members in New York, where they have evidently, unfortunately, some organized illegal fraud activity. And so I'll just end with that. And again, thanks for the opportunity. Look forward to the questions.
Thank you. Megan?
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Good afternoon, members of the Plastic Advisory Council. As somebody who was born in the Garden State, I spent my entire childhood in South Orange. I graduated from Columbia High School. My mom, Carol, was born in Newark. She still lives in Springfield. I'm incredibly proud to be from New Jersey. I come to today's meeting with a lot of passion and enthusiasm for reducing litter and increasing recycling in the state. Thank you so kindly for allowing me to speak to you this afternoon on behalf of American Beverage, whose members produce and distribute a wide array of refreshment beverages throughout a network of local bottlers who live and work in this state. The New Jersey beverage industry provides over 7,300 jobs. Those jobs are some of the best paid, highest benefit jobs available in communities to employees with and without college degrees, and many of them are union jobs. The beverage industry plays an important role in advancing the circular economy. Our packaging is designed specifically and optimized for recycling. We're carefully designing PET bottles and aluminum cans to be 100% recyclable, have high commodity values, and when collected and recycled, become new bottles and cans. In 2019, the beverage industry launched Every Bottle Back, a commitment with leading environmental and recycling groups to decrease the industry's use of virgin plastic and invest $100 million in recycling access, education, and infrastructure. As you know, recycling programs in our country differ from state to state and city to city. With the national recycling average in the low 30%, there's clearly a great need for improvement. We're losing valuable materials that are intended to be remade into new products. Recycling is underperforming in too many places due to inefficient systems that are in need of reform or modernization. Voluntary action alone will not achieve the scale needed to meet targets or achieve critical system change. We support well-designed extended producer responsibility, or EPR. EPR is a simple concept. It's a policy that shifts responsibility for what happens to consumer packaging and printed paper at end of life from local governments and consequently taxpayers to the producers who put packaging and printed paper on the market and sets targets so that producers are funding and managing the system to achieve efficiency and environmental outcomes. The best EPR systems are built on 4 key pillars. The first is strong environmental outcomes. None of us would be here if that wasn't something that we all really care about. The collection of all recyclable materials, so we see higher recycling rates and less material in nature. 2, consumer convenience. Consumers should be able to recycle something just as easily as they can throw it away. 3, financial sustainability. Our experience around the globe shows that the most successful systems are funded and managed by producers with appropriate government oversight. Money put into the system stays in the system. Government sets the scope of the system and approves the targets to reach. And the 4th, producer access to materials. The producers responsible for funding the system should have access to recovered materials in order to create circularity and keep valuable materials like aluminum, glass, paper, and strong durable plastics like PET, HDPE, and polypropylene at their next best highest use. EPR covers all consumer packaging and printed paper regardless of recyclability. All producers pay into the system, and producers are financially incentivized to consider recyclability at the point of design and make smarter, environmentally friendly choices about the materials they're using. EPR programs like this are run successfully in many countries around the world. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to share our thoughts. I'm inspired by New Jersey's commitment to reducing plastic waste and increasing the circularity of materials. The formation of the PAC and its diverse membership and strong leadership proves that New Jersey is committed to seeing all sides of this issue and taking informed and meaningful action. We look forward to continuing to work with the council and state lawmakers to develop the best environmental policies for New Jersey. Thank you.
Thank you. Marilyn?
Hi, I'm Marilyn Sloshback, former chair of the New Jersey Restaurant and Hospitality Association. I've been in food and beverage and retail food and beverage for over 35 years at the Jersey Shore. I started my career basically with Cindy Ziff, working in environmental awareness at the Jersey Shore. Food and beverage goes hand in hand with environmental work. We are coastal. Most of our business directly comes from and depends on a healthy environment, especially one that's related to the ocean coastal waters. So I've really prided my work in hospitality going hand in hand with a clean environment and bringing awareness. The one attribute to being in food and beverage is you are constantly face to face with the consumer. So you have the ability to get your messaging out in a very direct, comforting, and nurturing way. So I've used my ability to speak directly to consumers and put these values in their hands, so to speak, or on their plate or in their glass, and instituted policies that deal with some of the issues that we're facing here, whether it's a no straw policy or no plastics policy. In our retail, we prided ourselves in not selling any beverages that were in plastic bottles, which was a very difficult thing to do on a boardwalk consumer environment, but we managed to do it. I would say that I have more questions than answers when it comes to the bottle bill discussion. The research that I've done shows that it can be done, that we need to take steps. We need to have more education around recycling and around plastics in general, and that the information that the consumer is getting is not always factual and is misleading and allowing consumers to believe that they are doing more benefit to the environment than harm. And I don't know that this bottle bill is the end all be all solution, but what I do know is that every step we take is a step towards a better end all be all solution. And from the research I've done in different states, it generally begins with states that have a more proactive environmental base of people who are concerned about the outcome for generations to come. states that maybe are more liberal in their thought process about taking first steps and second steps and third steps to get to a bigger result. And that takes people that are fearless, people who are willing to take leaps of faith and education with the public and take some backlash along the way. So I'm hoping that these panel discussions don't become polarized. I'm not here to give an opinion in one way or another. I'm in an industry that purchases product, disposes of product, has the issues that you're talking about as far as how we eliminate waste, how we consume waste, how we package waste. And we've done a pretty good job of working within the parameters of doing what we can to make an impact with our consumers and with our employees to make a difference. And I think on a bigger level, I'm very proud that New Jersey is taking the steps to create a plastic advisory council to begin with and become part of the solution, not the problem. But we need to put all these politics aside and really get down to the nitty gritty. This might not be the end solution, but I haven't seen any research that shows that it doesn't create jobs or it doesn't change the mindset of people and begin a conversation that is bigger than just this panel and just this discussion in the moment.
Thank you. We're going to ask the panel members questions that were developed by members of the PAC. If you would like to respond to a question, please use the raise your hand function, and we'll take responses in the order the hands go up. So a number of states have bottle bills already. If you have experience complying with bottle bills in other states, could you tell us a bit about what your experiences are and give us some examples? Mary Ellen?
Hi, yeah, thank you. So our members, as I mentioned, a lot of them are multi-state operators, and a lot of them also have stores in New York and Connecticut. They have reported, as well as our colleagues who lead food trade associations in those other states, have reported very negative experiences with bottle bills. One of the issues that is raised to us, I would say most consistently, is the unsanitary conditions caused by the storage of these containers. As I mentioned in my opening statement, we see a lot of problems with rodents, rat infestations. One of our members was just telling us last week about some of his stores in New York, in the area with machines, opened up the machines, a roach was crawling up his arm. The type of thing that you definitely don't want to associate with food. They've talked about there being tobacco products in the bottles, needles in the bottles, just, really dirty, broken bottles. It's become, in some cases, a safety issue for their employees. It's just a really negative experiences. So for our members, it's not hypothetical. When we talk about a bottle bill in New Jersey, a lot of them have already seen what that looks like in New York and Connecticut and some of these other states. They're also reporting some issues with space constraints, labor supply, workforce supply challenges, because there's a lot involved with maintaining the machines, cleaning, and there's extra cleaning, sanitation of the storage spaces. So, overall, it's something that they are very, very concerned with whenever these discussions come up in New Jersey.
Thank you. Megan?
Thank you. So I would say there's vast differences that exist even between just the 10 DRS states in the United States. And I would say that redemption in 2022, which is the most recent data we have from Container Recycling Institute, Susan spoke earlier, that most recent data shows us that redemption ranged from 38% to 86%. I think that tells you just how vastly different those systems are and how they perform. And it also tells us that just having DRS doesn't equate to high redemption rates. In fact, beverage container redemption in 2022 saw 7 of the 9 US bottle bill states with available data. CRI, this is again CRI data, doesn't have any on Iowa, saw those seven of those 9 drop or remain within 1 plus or minus 1%. So the bottom line there is that deposit systems are incredibly nuanced and really complicated. I'd also like to point out that DRS requires entirely new infrastructure that does not exist. That means new redemption, new buildings, new sheds, new depots, new trucks, new kiosks, new RVMs, new skills, and more. Whereas extended producer responsibility, on the other hand, takes advantage of and builds upon what already exists. We know that the Recycling Partnership did its State of the Curbside report in 2024. They have that New Jersey has 94% of single family homes have access to recycling, which is amazing. That's a lot of groundwork already laid and a lot of money invested. EPR would support and optimize that groundwork and also take advantage of opportunities for improvement. For example, only 20% of multifamily residents have access to recycling in New Jersey, which is a huge opportunity. EPR addresses the entire system from ensuring that all residents have at-home recycling access. They're provided meaningful and robust education about recycling. It optimizes the collection of recycling and invests in processing technologies, all to meet strong environmental targets and provide more materials for sale on commodity markets back to producers.
Megan, do you have any insight other than the 5 cent versus 10 cent
Absolutely.
redemption amount? Do you have any idea outside of that difference why some states would be low and other states would be high?
I mean, I think that comes down to the nuance of the system themselves, that just snapping your fingers and saying, ta-da, now we have DRS doesn't automatically mean high redemption rates. That there's a lot more things that go into it than that.
Okay. Marilyn?
Yeah, I just had some questions because you talk a lot about rodents and bugs and things like that, which from the restaurant standpoint, we deal with that with recycling anyway. Most of the roaches come from cardboard packaging from overseas. Most of the rodents come from food waste, compost waste, which we compost in our restaurant, and not cleaning the recycling properly. So I'd like to understand that piece a little bit. And then my other question is what I've read about other states that are doing bottle bills, that job creation is a big part of that piece of the solution, and why that wouldn't be a part of something in New Jersey. If anybody can speak to that.
Beth, if you want me to speak with the first part.
I want to be very careful because the goal for the panel presentations is to help the PAC understand the issues from many various perspectives. So having panel members having conversations about their differences of opinions, I think may not be the most helpful use of our very limited time. So I'd like to stay focused on the PAC member questions, at least to make sure we have time to go through those. And then we can come back and maybe have a side conversation if there's time at the end, if that would be acceptable to everybody. But I really want to stay focused on the PAC questions. Let's see. And the second question is, we all seem to agree that plastic waste is increasing rapidly because we're using more and more plastics. If New Jersey chooses not to enact a bottle bill, what specific measures would you recommend from your industry's point of view that would allow the state to better deal with the growing amount of plastic container waste? Megan?
Thank you. I would say first, let's look a little bit at the data, which I know that is really important to the members of the PAC. We have that beverage container, PET beverage bottles of all types account for 7% of plastics in the municipal waste stream. And this is beverage industry data compared to the latest EPA data, unfortunately for 2018, but that's the latest we have. And then we also have KEB's most Keep America Beautiful, their most recent litter study from 2020 that has PET beverage bottles at 5% of the total plastic litter. This litter study also shows that 0.2% of all litter is plastic soda bottles and 0.6% of all litter is plastic water bottles. So DRS is really only addressing a small portion of waste if we look at those numbers. Whereas EPR, on the other hand, would address all consumer packaging. So you're thinking food wrappers, shrink wrap, clamshells, meat trays, the plastic film being wrapped around potatoes and apples and bananas, God knows why, at the grocery store, the body wash ordered online, and the plastic bubble wrap it shipped in. Because EPR, again, addresses all of the stuff regardless of recyclability, all packaging, consumer packaging, all printed paper, regardless of its intended or unintended end-of-life scenarios. And furthermore, EPR financially incentivizes consumer brand companies to do better and be better.
Let's see. Marilyn, I think.
Marilyn, you're muted.
Marilyn?
Sorry. I agree with Megan. Education is a really big part of this as far as consumers are concerned. Most people do not even understand what they're recycling and how to recycle it and the different types of plastic that they're purchasing and consuming, and shifting people away from plastic consumption and shifting the consumer to demand other forms of packaging or lack of packaging. I was in the store the other day and watched a gentleman put a plastic bag for every single piece of produce he bought. 1 carrot, 1 pepper, 1 onion, instead of just putting them all into his reusable bag. It was giving me anxiety and heart palpitations. It was so unnecessary. But this is just consumer marketing, campaign education, teaching our young kids and middle school kids so that they bring this education home into the household, starting young, starting in school. There's so many things we can do about messaging to change the perception. When we stopped using straws at Langosta, our managers would have drinks thrown at them. People would get irate. But when consumers started demanding that shifted, and then the government started demanding that consumers couldn't use straws anymore, industries started manufacturing different products. Plastic straw manufacturers started making everything from pasta straws to agave straws to avocado straws. So if the consumers start shifting their desires, the industries will follow because they need to shift how they make money. I think whatever this pans out, we will be able to change the trajectory in a different way.
Mary Ellen?
I completely agree about the need for additional consumer education. And I know that Seth earlier talked a little bit about Recycle Coach, that app. I'd also like to mention the How to Recycle program. This is a standardized on-package labeling system that communicates recycling instructions to the public. A lot of our members and a lot of consumer brand companies are participating in this program. Every package that has this label undergoes an individualized assessment based on those packaging specifications. And what I think is neat about this program is the company receives practical recommendations for design improvements. And this is something that our members spend a lot of time and effort over the years trying to improve their packaging, both in terms of product and packaging modification, some improvements with more lightweight plastic packaging, for example, and then also to make their packaging more recyclable. The How to Recycle program recently launched a new initiative utilizing QR codes so that the consumers would also have additional information about their local recycling requirements, which I know is something that we talked about a lot today because with the confusion about what is and isn't recyclable and the potential for contamination. I will say that one of the challenges is unique to food and beverage packaging and containers that you're not necessarily going to have with, say, a shampoo bottle, right? It has to be that package has to be able to prevent the contamination of the spoilage of the food. So there's a lot of food safety considerations that go into those types of packaging. Our members that have managed to, again, sort of modify their packages and their containers, and there's been a lot done in the plastic realm. It takes a long time to get from point A to point B. Once they've developed with their scientists what they think will work, it's often there's years of testing involved. So I think it's something that is going to continue to improve as technology improves. One of the other areas that we would like to see some more work and research on is within advanced recycling technologies. This is something that, as our members are grappling with compliance with the new post-consumer recycled content law, there isn't enough supply at this time of all the materials that are appropriate for food contact. So this is an area that we'd like to see some more work done on.
Our third question, from your perspective, from your industry's perspective, how are New Jersey businesses currently dealing with mandatory recycling? Are they complying? And how would a bottle bill affect recycling within the business sector versus the home that puts the MSW out by the curb? Marilyn?
Well, I think here we come back to education again. I think in the business sector that I'm in, compliance is there to the level that people understand they're being compliant. Cross-contamination is a big problem in our industry and probably in home recycling as well, because people don't understand what is really recyclable, especially over the last few years as the recycling standards have changed in our country and in New Jersey. So education has to be reevaluated and simplified. I think people are thinking they can recycle a lot more things than they can recycle, and that's contaminating the stream of recycling. I think a bottle bill, the same way the recycling is a problem, if the bottle bill isn't rolled out with sufficient education that gets to the business owner in a way that they're able to process that through their staff in a consistent way, you're going to have the same issues as you would have with the existing recycling.
Megan?
Sure. I would say, our companies have many zero waste production facilities around the country where everything is reused or recycled. The last data we show has well over 90% diversion from disposal at our facilities nationwide. I don't feel that I'm in a position to necessarily rate or judge businesses in New Jersey and how they're complying. So I would prefer not to go beyond an posture.
Mary Ellen?
Thank you. I'll just add that a lot of our national partners are participating in the Recycling Infrastructure Now Coalition. This group is working around innovative ideas for more collection and recycling materials and transitioning to that circular economy that we talked about. And one of their specific areas of focus is improving recycling accessibility in underserved communities.
Adoption of a bottle bill would significantly or could significantly change New Jersey's existing recycling and litter abatement programs. What costs and benefits would you see to New Jersey businesses or businesses in your area of expertise if a bottle bill was implemented? Positives or negatives, or both? Mary Ellen?
Yeah, I sort of a little bit repetitive to my opening statement, but we see a cost to our industry certainly. As we discussed, we already pay over 50%. My businesses specifically pay over 50% of the litter tax. So all the costs that would be borne by setting up and maintaining a bottle bill system would essentially be double taxation. And of course, as we talked about, besides the economic costs, we really don't want to see the successful curbside recycling program that we have go away. We don't want to see the REA grants go away or the Clean Communities program to be significantly undermined. So these are concerns that are important to our members.
Megan?
Thank you. I would add that one of the panelists on the previous panel, mentioned that municipalities and taxpayers are overburdened by the costs of residential recycling, and I agree. And under EPR, producers would shoulder that burden. Under DRS, however, that wouldn't alleviate any of those costs. And I heard from a couple of the folks from the first couple of panels that said that those costs would only be raised to make recyclers whole. As you're taking out the valuable commodities, that they would actually have to raise them. So instead of alleviating the burden through a process of EPR, which would cover all of it, I do think that that's the best way forward for New Jersey, especially considering how much groundwork has already been done and how much infrastructure already exists curbside. That really building on and optimizing that through EPR is in my opinion, the best path forward.
Thank you. Marilyn?
I'd be interested to see how it would affect hospitality because my business pays 2/3 of our garbage removal is recycling removal. And if that was to get cut back due to a bottle bill, if it would save me money as a hospitality operator by creating jobs in an underserved community where I do business and allowing someone to make money off of carting away my recycling waste instead of me having to pay to have it taken away. I don't know the answer to that, but it'd be interesting to see what that result is in other areas like the municipality that I'm in, which is an underserved municipality.
Thank you. Could you discuss any economic impacts or benefits you can see for consumers if a bottle bill was implemented? Megan?
Thank you. I would say that, since 1987, when New Jersey passed its Mandatory Source Separation and Recycling Act, New Jersey residents have been putting recyclables out on the curb. That act required recycling in residential, commercial properties or businesses and institutional locations like schools, hospitals, prisons. How well that law is working should be considered, and I'm commending the PAC for doing so, for leaning in on how to improve circularity and recycling in New Jersey. Behavior change and the implications for consumers should be accounted for, though, including important convenience and equity considerations. Many New Jerseyans live in urban suburban communities, and this committee should be considering how the implications of asking residents to transport recyclables rather than providing access to recycling at their homes, including, I would say, the 80% of multifamily homes that need it. I mean, that's a real opportunity to build that, and EPR would bring that as part of that law.
Mary Ellen?
Yes, as we have said, this really is a tax on consumers. Many are not going to be able to come back and recoup their deposits, particularly in areas, as Megan mentioned, where there may be limited access to transportation, or, you know, particularly maybe some urban areas. We see this in the other bottle bill states. There's a significant number of unclaimed deposits, and they don't necessarily go to any particular sustainability programs, right? They go to the state's general fund, and to a certain extent, it can become potentially a money grab. And then we talked a little bit about the expense of operating a bottle deposit system in New Jersey. So these costs are going to have to be somewhat absorbed in the form of higher prices by consumers.
Same question, economic impacts or benefits to businesses that sell beverage containers, in which might be right up Megan's alley, in a bottle bill state.
I would thank you for the. I think one thing we haven't talked about, which is important, is fraud. So fraud remains a largely hidden but serious problem with DRS. It makes beverages more expensive for consumers and creates an uneven playing field for New Jersey companies compared to retail and distribution businesses in neighboring states, and I'll explain. So first, there's redemption fraud, and that's when individuals or organizations bring non-deposit containers into deposit states for refunds, or redeemers attempt to cheat the system. Cross-border fraud is a chronic problem in this region, in the New Jersey region, as empty Pennsylvania and New Jersey containers currently without deposit find their way into New York and Connecticut. Redemption fraud can also occur at a really large scale, involving truckloads of containers and other costly cheating mechanisms. In a recent case, a California company was ordered to pay $140 million in restitution and penalties for fabricating redemption records. Fraud is also, on the other side of that coin, also a problem for retailers and distributors on both sides. Transshipping occurs today when deposit eligible containers are purchased without a deposit in New Jersey or Pennsylvania, for example, and then shipped into New York and sold with the deposit. So the middleman is then pocketing the deposit. The local distributor not only loses business, but then has to pay the refund and expense of collecting and processing that empty container that didn't have the deposit paid on it to begin with. All of that raises costs of doing business, and it's just something that I would hope that the PAC takes into consideration, as we do have a good evidence of this in states around the country. This was immortalized by Kramer in a Seinfeld episode. I believe it was probably 25 years ago.
Marilyn?
Well, the other flip side is if we all had a bottle bill, then nobody would have fraud because we wouldn't have to go across the state lines.
Yep.
And in my early Seinfeld episode as a child, I used to take all my bottles with my dad and get my money and put it in my savings account for my Christmas club. So there's that too. So there's both sides of the coin.
Absolutely.
Mary Ellen?
Thank you. I think a lot of what we already talked about in terms of the cost, both economic and onerous costs on our businesses that we need to implement these systems. I think, you know, it's interesting with the fraud piece. That is something that we've definitely heard a lot about. And one of my colleagues in one of the bottle bill states that one of our neighboring states mentioned, you know, they said, you know, it's not our customers. If it was something where our customers were coming back to the stores, which is, I think, one of the goals of a bottle bill. If our customers were coming back to the stores, we would be happy with that, and they would bring their bottles back, and then they would shop while they were there. And we're not seeing that. We're seeing people come in with large amounts of product that are not necessarily, you know, purchased in that state and being redeemed. And these are not necessarily regular customers that are recognizable to the store managers. And then, you know, then there's long lines that are for the actual customers that really do want to bring them back. So this is something that's definitely an issue and a problem. New York is their past legislative session was actually advancing a bill to set up a bottle bill fraud task force. So I think that kind of tells you how significant this problem is.
All right, those were the questions originally developed by the PAC. We still have about 15 minutes left in this session. So I would like to open this up to PAC members only. If they have additional questions for these panelists, please use the raise your hand function. Christine, I'm assuming you can see more people than I can.
I can, and I don't see any raised hands at this moment. There's Cindy.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for this really interesting discussion. I'm always curious from the perspective of stores and restaurants, small and large. So Marilyn, thank you so much for providing some insights on that. I wonder, speaking to Beth Rabbit's quest for data, it's so important to have some numbers. Are there any numbers on the percentage of restaurants or hospitality sectors that are in compliance with recycling rules? I mean, I know I've been to many restaurants that say they don't have to recycle, or they're not recycling. It may be low-hanging fruit to focus some educational efforts on that, but are there any numbers on compliance within that sector? Does anyone know about?
I don't know, because who would oversee that? The health department doesn't come in and check the recycling bins when they're doing a health inspection. So I don't even know how you would get that data unless the recycling companies are willing to go through the garbage. But I've also been outside when the recycling guys have come and seen contamination and said, basically fork it and thrown it all together because they don't want to deal with it. And the contamination is so prevalent in a restaurant because of things like kitchen gloves or the thermal printer paper that the tickets come. If people throw that in the recycling, it's contaminated because that thermal paper has a coating on it. So there's so many things that can contaminate our recycling that is, I'm like the Nazi going through the garbage when I walk through the restaurant, but most people aren't doing that. And even the codes that we get from the recycling company, like I just went through our signage the other day and started Xing out things that were wrong, that I know they can't recycle, but they're actually on the recycling picture book that comes with the thing we get from the garbage company. So, and I'm telling people, like, they're throwing plastic wrap in there, or they're throwing a quart container in there. And, so I think it would be impossible to actually get accurate numbers from a restaurant. I don't even know how you would do that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think you've listed a couple really key areas there for thought and, for figuring out how to fix some of the problems.
It's like, who would regulate it? It would be the first thing you would have to figure out. Is it, is it the health department? Is it the zoning? Who is the body of government that would oversee that? Is it the DEP coming in and doing a yearly spot inspection? I'm sure, Christina, you don't want an extra job every year going to the restaurant and doing recycling inspection.
So excuse my ignorance on this. Sorry, Beth, I just had a follow up for that.
Yeah.
Can I just, So do you contract out separately? Do all businesses contract out separately for collection, or are you part of the municipal collection system?
It depends on the municipality, but most municipalities have you contract separately. Very small, like cafes or retail stores might contract through the municipality, but on a larger scale, you'll go through a third party.
Thank you. Thank you. That's helpful.
Gary?
Thank you, Beth. I have a question for Megan, please. And Megan, first, thank you very much for participating and sharing your knowledge with us today. My question, Megan, is I certainly understand how the Clean Communities works in New Jersey and the payment from the industry and to support the funding for the program. Can you speak a little bit about, and Bonneville states what the responsibilities of your industry are?
With regard to, and are you asking for a comparison to
the funding of the program?
So it depends. I mean, so you have 10 bottle bill states that exist in the US. Many of them are incredibly expensive for industry because there's, I think we can all agree, there's gets to be a lot of hands, sticky hands in those pies that, you know, want to take money and use them for other things like roads, which are important. Roads are great, but, you know, when you have a pot of money that's supposed to be dedicated to recycling, it's best to keep it there, and that doesn't happen a lot. There are, you know, a very small number of states. There's one in particular that operates the money very well. It is producer run. And that is the reason why. And producers are, there are targets set. Producers need to meet those targets. In order to do so, they are then the onus of making sure that the system runs and is efficient and is optimized and is meeting targets is kind of all baked in together. And that's why it is a really successful system. And that system is one that doesn't have high handling fees. It actually doesn't have handling fees at all because it is run by a co-op model of the retail and the distributors. So I would argue that you know is a successful model. But unfortunately, you know, these are really antiquated systems. They've existed since the 1970s, a lot of them. And so a lot has happened over time. And I would also say that the one system that I think is doing pretty well, that took a long time to get there. I mean, we're talking 1971 was when that law passed, and that was not what passed. That took many, 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 many iterations and decades to get to where it is now. And that was a real challenge. And so I think that, you know, just again, starting with EPR and building on the great infrastructure that New Jerseyans have laid out makes a lot of sense, and not kind of abandoning that for all brand new infrastructure would just be, that just doesn't make a lot of sense.
Thank you.
Which one is that, Megan?
That would be Oregon.
Christina,
again,
are there?
that took a while that took a long time to get where it is now.
So no, Beth, there are no other hands up right now.
You know, before we end the session, we've got a couple minutes. I'd like to ask Mary Ellen a question that came up in the morning session. Mary Ellen has been very actively involved in a pilot program to try to reduce the amount of recyclable plastic bags that are piling up because of home delivery. And one of the questions that came on the chat from a member of the public was, how do you envision a bottle bill being implemented with a home delivery service? Does the potential exist for buildup of bottles, or how would buildup of bottles be prevented when we take into account home delivery options?
Bethy, thank you. It's not something that we've really, I think, talked about or thought about too much. And in my mind, sure, the bag conversation is so much, yeah, it's so separate.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I can see sort of the same thought process, I think, and I think part of the challenge would be, you know, but the issue with the delivery of the bags is that if it's the same people that are not going back to the stores, then they're not going to go back to the stores to bring their bags back either. So I would imagine a similar challenge. Now, obviously, I think it's a little bit different because, you know, the Food Council, as you noted, created this bag redistribution program so that the bags can be collected, sanitized, and distributed to food banks and other nonprofits. I don't think that would really work with the bottle bill. I guess I'm not necessarily seeing it as quite the same thing, but yeah, I mean, I imagine you'd have the same type of challenges with getting those bottles returned if people aren't, you know, either for convenience or because they're not physically able to get to a location.
That question this morning struck me as one of the possible unintended consequences.
Yeah.
That we didn't think of with the recyclable bags, but if we move into this world of more and more home delivery, it might be a topic that we have to consider as, you know, how would we deal with that question? Yeah. Any additional questions for these panel members? Megan, thank you for jumping in. We're really thrilled that you were able to join us. Thank you.
This was, I have so much New Jersey pride that this was so meaningful to me. So thank you.
And we love New Jersey pride. That was really
My mom
nice
is
to have.
like so tickled. She was so excited. So thank you.
All right, we're going to take a 4-minute break and we will start with the final panel at 2:00. Thank you all.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Beth, did you just say something? I turned off my camera for a second. I mean, not my camera, my mic. Oh, I can't hear you. You're muted. Okay.
I was talking to my husband in the background to tell him I have
Sorry.
2 minutes on mute.
No problem.
Oh.
Janine, I think is having audio problems, and I'm gonna tell her to come out and come back in. Nope. I would love to take a picture of her tongue sticking out, but I won't.
You're too kind, Christina.
Thanks, Lauren. I didn't mean for everybody to hear that.
Yep.
Oh.
You have no audio at all. Can you call in? Yep.
We lost Janine.
Well, we didn't lose her. She's having audio problems, so she is on camera, but she's gonna use her phone and call in for audio.
Yeah, or Janine, you could use my office if you'd like. I don't mind not speaking at all. So switch.
Oh,
Is you guys
smart
hear me
man.
now?
Yes,
Wait,
we can hear you
Christina,
now.
you're not in the office. You could. Oh, there you go. Okay.
Oh,
You can-
yeah, she could go in my office too.
You can
I'm
hear
not
me
in.
okay? I don't
Yes.
think
Oh,
I'll
yeah.
have time-
Oh,
I
yeah,
don't
for
think I'll have
sure.
Time to log anybody in and stuff like that. I don't know what's going on. I
No,
was
you're
talking
loud and
this-
clear.
I was talking this morning, so I don't know. Oh, just to make it a little more fun. Whew.
Thank you to everyone on the call, especially on the panel. And Beth, you're remarkable. And
Yeah.
the DEP team behind the scenes, making it all smooth, all really, really great.
It's just so different from in person. I've never done this digitally before. This is not the same.
You
Well,
got it.
you make it
Doing
look
great.
good. You make it look good.
Yeah,
A pro.
make it look easy. Wonder what happened to my computer. I know I did kick something with my big feet while I was eating lunch.
Well, there you go. That's a
That
plausible,
be it.
plausible start.
That could
Unplug
definitely-
something.
Teams has some wonky issues sometimes, Janine. I know some people get kicked out of Teams after an hour and
Oh,
there's no rhyme or reason to it. And they have
What I
to
just
come,
did was
go
I-
out and
I-
come back in.
I hadn't accepted the meeting, so I just accepted that, but that didn't make a difference.
Yeah, that doesn't.
Do we have, okay, so do we
I
have?
definitely need a new
Alan
power
and
strip,
John?
Christina.
Yes, ma'am.
I think I
We're
need a
good?
new power strip because mine was from
Yes.
mine was from 37 years ago when they evaluated the bottle bill the first time. That's what mine looks like.
I will work on that. Like Gary works for Selena in the White House in Veep.
Okay, we're live.
Okay.
We are.
Okay, last panel.
Yeah. I
Let
just
me
take
just
it off.
get my slides up. I thought they were up. Sorry.
I don't have any.
Okay. All right, we're beginning our last panel of the of the day. Just to remind everybody, when this panel ends at 3:00, there will be 2 hours of facilitated public comment, and we welcome everybody to stay on the call. It won't be a question and answer session. It will be a chance for people to comment on the topics we've discussed today, the various aspects of a bottle redemption program. All right, to talk about government perspectives on implementing a bottle recovery program, we have Janine McGregor, who's Director of the Department of Environmental Protection, Division of Sustainable Waste Management, Alan Weston, who's the Legislative Director for the New Jersey Association of Counties. And we should reiterate for people who may not know, each county, each of the 21 counties in New Jersey is responsible for their own county recycling program under the guidelines and guidance of DEP. And John Weber, who is a borough councilman in the borough of Bradley Beach, and also a member of the Plastic Advisory Council. So Janine, would you like to begin this session for us?
Yes, I'm here. Everything's going wrong technologically, but I think I've got it together. Anyway, thank you all. I'm Janine McGregor, Director of the Division of Sustainable Waste Management, as Beth told you, and I'm very happy to be here to gain perspectives of experts and stakeholders and to discuss whether some type of bottle redemption program should be reconsidered in New Jersey. While I'm happy about that, I'm not really happy to be on the last panel because almost everything I was going to say has been covered already. So I am ad-libbing a little bit. I do have a couple of things I want to point out, and it's about gaining perspectives, which I said is part of the reason we're here today. You know, we talked before about if recycling is real. In the interest of that discussion, I'd like to say it should be realer. Okay, there's definitely improvements that could be made. And I also think everybody needs to understand that several things can be true at one time. There was an industry effort, no doubt there was an industry effort to address the negative image of plastics, you know, several years ago by saying we can, we will, and we are recycling everything. And that was found to, you know, that was a knowing misrepresentation. That could be true. It could also be true that there's mechanical recycling facilities that can successfully recycle types 1 and 2. There are also a lot of plastics that are able to be recycled that are not being recycled that get into the waste stream. We know that's true. We know it would also be helpful to recycle more types of plastic as long as it's an environmentally responsible manner. And we also know that there's absolutely contamination in the recycling stream. So we know all this stuff. You know, all of those things, or many of those things, can be true at the same time. And we have to look at all of them together to really get to the bottom of this. We were presented with lots of different data today. I'm assuming, and I think we should all assume that you're presenting reliable data. I think we can agree, and we've already established that some of these contradictions, they measure different things, and we might be comparing apples and oranges. So we need to keep that in the back of our heads. It's not like somebody's wrong, but it may be different necessarily. We've also been given examples of what's going on in different states, what works and what does not work in other states. And that's very valuable. That's part of the thing that my staff does all the time, is look what's going on in different states. But we have to look at it in the context of, they have a very different system. It's difficult for us to compare what they're doing and works in another state and integrating it into what we have. So we know all this. We have great minds here, and I hope something does rise to the top to help us solve this problem. We're doing this study. We've, as we mentioned, 37 years since we've looked at a bottle bill. We've got letters from Enviros seeking the evaluation of a bottle bill. Senator Smith asked us to hold a public meeting. So the PAC definitely thought it was a good reason to, it was made good sense to look at this again. New Jersey system, you heard we have a Clean Communities program. The act was passed in 1986 to fund most of the money. 80% goes to municipalities, also to counties, and that is to fund their programs. It was the first environmental producer responsibility law. It goes toward cleanup and removal of litter on public lands. It goes to running their programs, adopt a beach, adopt a highway programs, education, enforcement of anti-littering laws, stormwater management activities. That's kind of a weird one that it goes to that, but it's really key that littered bottles do not wash into our waterways. And then after that, the recycling mandatory source separation and recycling act that sunset in, I believe, 87. Then there was the Recycling Enhancement Act of 2008 that also established funding for counties, municipalities, DEP, other institutions of higher learning to conduct research. So I won't go through that all again. I will talk to the extent that I can about our position on a bottle bill. So it's not very exciting. We have not formally expressed an opinion on the bottle redemption program yet. We're waiting for results from this meeting and of the PAC's recommendations. And that's kind of where DEP's at with this right now. The PAC's position does not define DEP's position. It informs it. But the DEP does want to make sure we consider the results of all these efforts. Right now, if someone asked us, DEP would probably recommend no legislative action is taken until the PAC completes this study in the public meeting. But what we can do, what we'd rather do for now, is increase education, increase use of recycle coach, advance truth in labeling legislation, and other efforts to decrease contamination. There are many, many suggestions in the first year PAC report. There will be additional suggestions in the second year report to help us with this, but you got to keep in mind that those are recommendations. DEP cannot do all of them, but there are great ideas there. I would say the most I can say at this point about a bottle bill, we've seen proposals that set up a bottle redemption system, right? Some do and some do not maintain the Clean Communities and the recycling tax funding. We'd have to, before we can say whether we support, we'd really have to figure out whether that's workable. Some of our concerns would be, we'd still have to have our program to deal with everything except the bottles and cans. We'd have to administer this new program, most likely. It potentially doubles our effort. We'd have to look at, is it economically feasible at the local level? What amount of money would be generated? What revenue would go back to current recipients, such as counties and municipalities and universities? And most importantly, would it decrease their funding? And how would that impact their their solid waste and their recycling programs. And then finally, our biggest concern really would be what would happen to the industry and the recycling market. Beverage bottles, especially aluminum cans, you've heard already, are some of the highest value recyclables. The Recycling Market Development Council stated that, they found that processing centers will likely charge local recycling programs more if the materials collected from curbside have these higher value recyclables removed. So we don't have any answers yet. I appreciate all the different perspectives I heard today. I was surprised by some people who I thought felt one way, also expressed enlightenment in something that they hadn't thought of. And I think that's one of the most valuable things that could probably happen on a day like today. To just hear what the other side says, keep an open mind, and maybe some better solutions will come together by us all putting our heads together. Thank you.
Thank you. Alan?
Good afternoon. My name is Alan Weston. I'm the Legislative Director with the New Jersey Association of Counties and also the Government Finance Officers Association in New Jersey, which represents all of the state's municipal, county, and independent authority CFOs and in their role at the municipal level. And we at NJAC are the advocates, nonpartisan association that advocates on behalf of all 21 county governing bodies with a unified voice in an attempt to promote policy and regulation and legislation that would allow for counties to operate more effectively and efficiently. In my role at NJAC, I've been here for almost 13 years. I am the lead advocate for all of our environmental issues at the county level, and I'm also gubernatorially appointed as the county member of New Jersey's Clean Air Council, which is similar to this council in but not of the Department of Environmental Protection, and just recently served as the chair of that council for the last 2 years. So I certainly appreciate this is a long day for everyone and the amount of work that goes in on the DEP staffing side. And for everyone who's hung in there, both council members and the members of the public. Hopefully this last panel will be shorter because I think, as Janine touched on, pretty much all of the questions that are set to be asked have already been answered, really, including a lot of the ones that I think Janine was just asking hypothetically there. So with that, we have significant issues at the county level with the potential for a bottle bill. I think the reasons for such have already been outlaid in great presentations by Wayne, by Joanne, by Gary, a lot of funding issues. But as we go through the questions, I can address all those things kind of on an individual basis. And then, of course, any questions.
Thank you. John?
Well, that was so fast that I wasn't exactly ready for this. So thanks, everybody. I'm John Weber. I'm a PAC member holding the seat on the PAC for an elected official. I was elected to the Town Council of Bradley Beach in 2016, and I've served on it ever since. I was the chair of the town's environmental commission before that, leading our town to a Sustainable Jersey Bronze certification twice. So I believe categorically that a deposit return system or a bottle bill in New Jersey would save municipalities money. In recent years, many towns in New Jersey have spent just as much or more, and sometimes significantly more, to get rid of a ton of single-stream recyclables as they've paid to get rid of a ton of trash. So these are markets and they go up and down, but basically recycling is costing many towns just as much as trash disposal, if not more. So how could we save money? Presumably, many people will be bringing their beverage containers back to the retailer, back to the reverse vending machine, or back to redemption centers, thereby leaving less tonnage for our town to pay to haul and process. Now, not everybody, but like I said, some people, many people. With less material to pick up, the staff time involved would also be less, and thereby that's going to save additional money on the part of the town. 30 different studies, and I'm going to repeat this, 30 different studies between 2005 and 2020 looked at this issue, and they all concluded that a deposit return system generates savings for municipalities. Now, these studies include studies in US states with bottle bills, in US states that are looking to expand their bottle bills, in Canadian cities, in Canadian provinces, in other countries, countries that are in the EU, countries that are not in the EU. Reloop, who we heard from earlier, they just compiled all these studies in one place, and I would be happy to share that with the PAC as part of this hearing. So it's a bit disturbing just to hear people come on and say, oh, it's going to cost the town money, and not provide any kind of backup. We have 30 studies that all say municipalities save in this scenario. More importantly than having municipalities save money is something that the PAC has said in their first year report, and that PAC members have said over and over again. It is that we cannot recycle our way out of this plastic problem. The projection for plastic production worldwide is on a very steep upward curve. So even if we could somehow magically and rapidly increase plastic recycling somewhere up near 100%, we would never reach the production level because that is growing even more rapidly. So to repeat, recycling is not the answer. So I'm disturbed by a lot of this talk about let's do this to get better recycling. That's not why we should be doing this. The takeaway message from the PAC for the last 2 years has been that we must focus on reduction overall. We have to focus on reuse and refill for things that are currently put into single-use plastic containers. So a bottle bill in New Jersey, it would need to have a refill and reuse component. I want to remind everybody, no bill has been written yet. We don't have a bill to discuss. So I would say a New Jersey bottle bill, it would need to contain language that a certain percentage of beverages would have to be put in reusable, refillable containers by a certain date, and that percentage should increase over time. This is what bottle bills do, in my mind. They incentivize reuse and refill. And I too remember taking my bottles to Brookdale on Route 9 in Old Bridge, because that's where I lived when I was 10 years old. I can't think of another example that is scalable on a statewide level or on a countrywide level that is already in use worldwide that encourages reuse and refill more than a bottle bill does. Again, we're not going to get there on recycling alone. We never will. Reuse and refill should be our areas of focus. And it's just one way to get us there, at least with beverage containers. In any deposit return system, there's many, many unclaimed deposits. In New York State, they totaled about $139 million in 2021. Any disruption to the current system that we have, and there's been plenty of testimony about disrupting the current system, we can use the unclaimed deposits to correct for that. Now, my town gets a recycling tonnage grant from the state each year. I kind of think of it as a recycling rebate. It's $5,300. $5,300. That's in the context of a $12 million budget. So, but if the amount of that we were due in terms of these tonnage grants went down, and it was a little bit less because we were sending less to the recycling processors, then the unclaimed deposits could be used to make up the difference, okay? Similarly, our town gets a small grant from Clean Communities each year. It's about $12,000 or $13,000. If Clean Community grants will be less, then again, the difference can be made up with these unclaimed deposits. And again, I have to emphasize with the Clean Community grants, there's been testimony that it somehow like drives all the litter abatement across the state. I would just disagree with that. We get our $12,000, $13,000. It just goes into the general fund of the town. Yes, we spend money on litter abatement, and yes, we have to give percentages to Clean Communities as to where it's going, but I would not say it's driving anything from a budgetary sense. Some other positive aspects of a bottle bill are that it's going to increase collection rates, and that's good for litter reduction, and it will increase the actual recycling rates. All of these things are net positives on municipalities. We're going to save money, and we can structure a bottle bill so the unclaimed deposits help towns and help counties. And I am happy to talk about the rest of this in questions because I think there's a lot more to say. Thanks very much.
Thank you, John. Okay. The New Jersey legislature, as we've heard today, enacted statewide mandatory recycling and litter abatement programs nearly 40 years ago. So from your perspective, from a state, a county, or a municipal perspective, how would a bottle bill affect the existing system? John?
Yeah, I'd be happy to go. I just want to say people can assess the current system with respect to litter abatement, especially. They can use a special window to assess the litter situation. And that window is the window of your car, or the window of the train you're riding on, or the window of the bus that you're riding on. Meaning, look at the side of the road, the side of the highway, the side of the train tracks, the on-ramp, the off-ramp that you're getting to or from your highway, and look at how much litter is there, and look at how much of that is bottles. That's the current situation. So I would say what we're doing is not really working well at all, and I would welcome a system that would disrupt that to a certain extent, and at the very least just deal with the bottle part of all that trash on the side of our highways and byways and on-ramps and off-ramps. I think that system could use some disrupting. I think that'd be great.
Janine?
Yeah, thank you. I would say that, my fear would be that it would be burdensome for municipalities, and John has firsthand experience on what recycling, what municipalities are going through. I'm not sure that everybody is operating the exact same way, but they're already struggling, I think, to afford recycling services. If there's if we suspended curbside pickup for those materials and switch to drop off or switch to having to go to depots or redemption centers, I think it would result in a significant decrease in materials recycled. As John said, would it be offset? This is what we don't know. Would it be offset by the decrease in your solid waste fees because of the tonnage, that would the decrease in tonnage? So we don't know all that yet. The other thing that I think is really interesting with what John said, and so I would kind of modify my answer regarding Class A recycling facilities. Would this law, we don't have a law in front of us, so would this hypothetical law allow for and protect what John's talking about in terms of any decreased money that goes to the counties, or any decreased funding that goes to the counties or municipalities through clean communities or the recycling tax, would be supplemented or subsidized, whatever, by the unclaimed money? If that could be also covered in this law, the complexity of the law, you have to include that too. That would have to be in this law. So we're the material, another thing, that material would not be eligible for municipal tonnage grants. So yeah, there would be an impact. Whether or not it could be overcome or addressed by some of the stuff John mentioned, such as using excess receipts or unclaimed receipts for the redemption, that's a possibility.
My turn?
Yep.
All right. So as we've heard from numerous other speakers earlier today, a bottle bill would affect the existing system by basically removing the most valuable material from our curbside pickups, as Janine just mentioned, gutting our tonnage grants, gutting our clean communities funding, gutting our educational programs, because those are funded generally through those same funding aspects. And to imply that we would be saving money by doing so, perhaps in another state with a different system, that's possible. But in New Jersey, I don't think that is true at all. Because what you're going to have, and most electeds would recognize this, is once you're giving a service to your constituents, we are not going to be able to take away that service. You are not going to see towns or counties pull away from doing curbside pickups. Okay, so you're going to have two competing systems operating at the exact same time. And what you're going to do now is you're going to make that curbside pickup for your counties and your towns cost a substantial amount more. Now, specifically in Ocean County, if you were to remove the PET and aluminum revenue for the residuals from the stuff that they are collecting in Ocean County, it's almost $1 million for the PET alone, and it's $1.512 million for aluminum cans alone. Okay, that represents 25% or more of the revenue that they bring in from residual recyclable materials every single year. They're not going to stop curbside recycling in Ocean County because we put a bottle out there, but they are going to have at least 25% more costs in carrying out their program. Okay, Burlington County has indicated that those materials make up also around 25% of their revenue as a MERV. So, you know, I think it's a nice idea to think that we could use unclaimed deposits to make up this funding, and perhaps that could be true. But we are in New Jersey, folks. New Jersey, and Janine, I can say the things that you can't, the DEP. You know, DEP brings in more revenue than anybody. They've got more fees and more permits than any other department in the state. Yet look at their budget every single year. They are one of the most underfunded departments in all of government because the state comes in and the governor and the administration comes in. It doesn't matter if it's Governor Christie or if it's a left-leaning governor like Governor Murphy, and they gut the budgets of these departments and they defer these funds and they divert them to other purposes. Unless the fund is constitutionally dedicated, that money will absolutely not go to any type of program that is an environmentally conscious program. It will go to fill budget gaps, like they do in New York with $90 million that went last year into the general fund. Okay, and if you're saying, well, I'm kind of speaking out of school here, let's think of a couple of things, examples just off the top of my head of funds that are supposed to go to dedicated purposes that everyone would support and everyone would believe in, that don't go to those things. How about our 911 money in the state of New Jersey? Everyone pays 90 cents per phone line, okay, plus your VoIP when you're paying on a triple play per month to the state in a 911 and emergency response trust fund fee that's supposed to go back to our public safety answering points to pay for having the most up-to-date technology possible so that our first responders can have the technology that they need to make timely calls and responses to emergencies for our public. Okay, this is a no-brainer thing that we need to be spending that money on, that we're already collecting that money for. And guess how much money of the $124 million a year that the state collects for this purpose goes to that purpose? The answer last year was 10 million, because it's not constitutionally dedicated. We're already collecting money to recycle tires. Janine, I'd ask how much of that money in the department is actually going for that purpose. Okay, so in New Jersey, if that money is not nailed down, if it is not constitutionally dedicated, you know, that is going to fill other budget gaps. So what we are going to have is we're going to have a system where the legislature might look at this and say, this is a great idea, because the counties and the towns are still going to put property taxpayer money into curbside collection programs. And by the way, the state's going to get to pocket the overwhelming majority of the residual revenue that we get from the actual valuable materials that this program will then be parallel collecting somewhere else. Go ahead, John.
Beth, if I may, I just want to remind everybody, like I said before, the bill has not been written yet. We can constitutionally dedicate everything we want. I would love to constitutionally dedicate how much money goes back to towns and counties, and we can have that debate. That's a great debate to have. With respect to something Janine said, nobody's talking about replacing curbside. If everybody listened, the testimony was that the way this works best everywhere around the world is that curbside and a deposit return system, they complement each other. I still got a mayonnaise jar that needs to get recycled, so I still need curbside and, you know, and cardboard and newspaper and all these, and ketchup bottles and all these things. But Beverages, okay, that, you know, that would be different. If you want to constitutionally dedicate whatever processors are not getting because they're, you know, we're taking some of their money away, which I'm not sure I 100% agree with, but you know, we can do it. Like I said, the bill's not written yet, so let's just, you know, that's why we're having the debate, but people are, you know, not listening to, again, 30 different studies from all around the world saying like municipalities are going to save money. And I know we have more questions. Sorry,
Yeah,
Beth.
I mean, to that-
Good segue, John. Is there any way you see a bottle bill being compatible in some way with the existing system we have? Is there a way to integrate these two aspects?
Yeah, well, again, we've already had testimony that that's how it works best. Curbside and container deposit laws complement each other. I would say we need both because we have beverage containers and we also have, like I said, mayonnaise jars. We need both.
Well,
My response would,
we have the one now. But how in practical terms would a bottle bill carve out fit with what we currently have?
so my answer would be that it's not compatible to the existing system that we have here in New Jersey. I don't deny that if you had a state with very low recycling rates and you went to the bottle bill as your initial method and your initial way of funding it, that it could be very viable and work very well. But that's not the way that we went almost 40 years ago with addressing, you know, how we were going to do recycling in New Jersey. Okay. So for that reason, I do not see them as compatible. And as we said, while it might be the best that you're doing curbside and parallel, you're doing you know, you're doing your bottle deposit system. As I said, 25% of our revenue from our curbside collections is coming from those specific materials. We already having towns up and down the state, and Janine touched on this, having trouble getting vendors to respond to RFPs to continue their recycling programs under the current method with that revenue. So it's going to be to take that away, to increase that cost to whether it be the MERV or to the county if they're doing it countywide. I don't know how you replace that revenue and how you make up for the increased cost that the counties are going to have or the towns are going to have when you already have a difficulty getting vendors to respond to these things. So just kind of in closing about with the existing system, I think that we should really be working together on ways to, because the end goal here is to eliminate the usage of these plastics and these single uses and some of this litter that, you know, is toxic to the people, it's toxic to the environment. You know, everybody agrees on that, right? And I think the question number 2 that was asked of the last panel really is the way to go here. And the question in summary was kind of like, if not a bottle bill, then what, right? So my answer to that would be, and some people touched on this, is we got to do an enhanced EPR legislation, right? And get increased funding to work on the existing structures and infrastructure that we have now and the existing system that we have in New Jersey, which is unique to New Jersey. It's not an apples to apples comparison to the other places around the country. So we build on that existing system. We implement truth in labeling legislation, right? So the public knows what is recyclable and what is not recyclable. We use that to create a uniform statewide recycling list so we don't have County A collecting materials A through C and County B collecting different materials that might not be as marketable. Everybody should be collecting the same things. We should be doing it because they are marketable, they are recyclable. And then from there, we should be working to eliminate the usage of packaging of materials that are not reusable, right? I mean, that's getting us to where we go, where everyone wants to be, while maintaining and improving upon the existing infrastructure and system that we have in place in New Jersey. So that would have been my answer to question number 2 from the last panel.
Beth, can I jump in
Janine?
here? Yeah. Can you
Sure.
hear me okay? So another thing, you know, unfortunately, I'm agreeing with everybody. But one thing we have to keep in mind, and John pointed it out, this bill, the bill that comes out, or any bill, could repeal parts of other existing bills. It could be integrated into the Recycling Enhancement Act and the Clean Communities Act programs. I mean, it technically could be compatible depending on how it's written. I think it's complicated. I think it's there would have to be significant changes to the and there's some unknowns, but you say, can it be compatible with the existing system? I'd have to say yes if it's written that way, but what it will do to it, what it'll do to the market, and how it'll feel. I mean, we've had problems. We've already all acknowledged on the PAC that, and a few people said it already, just throwing more resources at teaching people how to recycle is not necessarily the way, because people just don't get it. Now, I can't even imagine if they've got to separate bottles that you drink from bottles that you have pickles in. I'm thinking that that's going to be difficult, but I guess if there's a monetary incentive for the deposit, that could help. But I've also heard that there's a lot of stuff rejected at these redemption centers. So there's no foolproof way, but yeah, depending on how the law is written, I guess they could be compatible, I'd have to say.
So that, Janine, leads us into the third question. What specific changes, regulatory changes, would have to be enacted to even incorporate within the existing structure a bottle bill component? Like what regulations would have to change?
Yeah, without having, what the bill is, yeah, we would need some kind of new regulatory or enforcement program to make sure that the structure of the program that's outlined in the bill is actually being implemented and maintained. I could see stuff like overseeing the stores that are mandated to have a bottle redemption kiosk, the bottle producers and retailers who are worked into that monetary flow maybe of a bottle fee and redemption payments. We don't really oversee that much of economic stuff. Maybe, I don't know if it would be us or Board of Public, not utilities, but consumer affairs or something. I'm not really sure. We definitely have to make changes to the litter abatement law that tax. I don't think manufacturers would really want to pay for the tax and also be required to pay for a collection program. Again, don't know how the law is going to look. We already talked about funding for clean communities could take a big hit. So yeah, without knowing what exactly it looks like, but I assume someone would have to make sure that the provisions are being adhered to, and that usually requires rules or permits or oversight by the department, registration, websites, all that kind of stuff that we do for all the new bills that come down the pike.
Alan, if a bottle bill component was incorporated into the existing structure, would it affect counties?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There are several counties that act as the MERV and do countywide recycling in their county. I listed a couple of counties and the amount of funding that they receive through the collection of the specific residuals that would be siphoned off by this program. So they would take a huge dramatic hit, almost a quarter of the revenue they use that gets put directly back into the funding of the program, should this happen.
Okay. Do any of you have actual information from other states, information pro and con of what other states went through when they implemented bottle bills?
Well,
Go
I
ahead, Jeff.
was going to say, I was a very small child when a lot of those things happened. So this is a broad question. It supposes that we're all experts on other states, which I think we're not. But my big takeaway is that these 10 states, they've had their bottle bills since, as we've heard today, the early 70s, the early 1980s, whatever. They've been around for a long time, and states haven't repealed them. all the horrible thing that the business panel said, all the horrible, results of bottle bills, if they were that horrible, sorry, but businesses are organized and they're well funded and they lobby, and they could just lobby their states to get rid of the bottle bill, and that hasn't happened. So that tells me that these states are seeing more upside than the small inconveniences that some businesses encounter as a result of having a bottle bill. And the one exception is Delaware, who had the weakest and the worst bottle bill in the country. It didn't even cover aluminum, which we've already heard is really one of the cash cows of recycling programs, and it didn't cover that. So, and every single beverage company in the country is headquartered in Delaware, and I'm sure they just lobbied to get rid of it and do curbside. Probably could have coexisted, but so all the other ones that have stayed for the last 30, 40, 50 years, that just shows me that there's an upside in those states.
So I would just say, again, that's only if you took, so we just heard that, yes, one state has already repealed the bottle bill, right? The other ones, so if there's 10 left, that's 20% of the country has a bottle bill. If they were so great, then why doesn't everybody have a bottle bill? That's the same can be true, mirrored of that logic. There are pros and cons to the bottle bill, which is the reason there haven't been, national adoption of such a program. And I think that recently, if you look to the pro and con experiences that other states have had, look to what everyone would consider to be the most successful bottle redemption program, which is probably Oregon, right? Oregon has recently considered expansion of the program. And one of the problems and some of the uncomfortable subjects that have come up in discussion about expansion of their program is issues that they're having with scavenging, issues that they're having with opioid addiction, right? So it's an uncomfortable truth, right, that opioid addiction is a national epidemic. The costs of opioids on the street have dropped to silly cheap levels. And what you've got is you've got people that can now go around and scavenge through recyclable materials and come up with revenue in their hand to feed their addiction. And you can Google it, check it out. It's an uncomfortable topic, but it's an unintended side effect of some of these bottle bill programs. And that's an issue that they're having in Oregon right now. Okay. In New Jersey, scavenging would be, being that we are the most densely populated state in the nation, scavenging would be a significant concern for all of my municipal folks and all of my county folks. Okay. If you could just have essentially, people with opioid addiction going around knocking over cans along the side of the road to pick out the valuable residuals and then turn that into revenue, I mean, that's a slippery slope. And it's something that they're seeing in Oregon. And one of the flip sides to that is you're seeing businesses like Target and Rite Aid who are pulling out of downtown Portland as we speak because they don't want to have their business be a part of this cycle. All right. And we talked a lot before about environmental justice communities, right? So approximately 16% of the state of New Jersey, so 1.5 million people, according to the Economic Development Authority, out of our approximately 9.2 million population, live in food deserts. All right. So we are already struggling to get supermarkets to come into our urban areas. There's no way we're getting a supermarket to come into an urban area if they also have to have a bottle bill on top of it. We already can't get them to do it. And as we're seeing, in other states, some companies are pulling out of these areas because they don't want to have the redemption program. They don't want their business to be a part of it. So, these are things that you have to weigh as well.
I would just add that, unfortunately, sorry about that. I'm having some technical difficulties. We at DEP, one of the things we do in my group is to look at other states and what they're working on and what they're doing. We haven't really begun that for the bottle bill issue because it really wasn't on the table legislatively for a while. So we will be reaching out to some other states to get their input. But my concern is that, if the laws went into effect into the 80s, are they going to really still have their implementation comments, like initial ones? Maybe now, maybe they'll be able to tell us, what they're thinking of now and why it's still working for them if it is. So yeah, it's some, we don't have the information yet, but it's something we hope to get.
And again, it's a pro for, I'm sure the legislature in New York would consider it a pro that they're getting $90 million a year in unclaimed deposits going to fill other budget gaps, right? So we'd have to be incredibly vigilant about that in New Jersey. Anything with a constitutional dedication would not just be legislation, it would have to go to a ballot referendum. So it would be more complicated to get it done. And we have had very, very limited examples of things that we have been able to do with a constitutional referendum in New Jersey. So it would make it more difficult to get it through. You would see, I mean, we're talking a lot about lobbying here. You'd see a lot of efforts to describe it as another tax. I mean, I don't know how you could say that it wouldn't increase cost to consumer, right? For purchasing those specific materials. So there would be a substantial effort then to defeat that question. It would be much easier for the legislature to pass it without going to the constitutional dedication, but then it really does put that funding at risk for diversion, which as as I mentioned, at least 2 or 3 examples of where the state is already doing that. So we'd have to be very, very careful if that is some way that, if the council is going to recommend going in this direction, or if the state is going to start advancing legislation to that effect, that we'd have to be incredibly careful that that money is not diverted.
I think we've touched on this last question in various ways. What impact, positive or negative, would a bottle bill have on New Jersey municipalities, on the counties, or the state from an economic perspective?
I don't want to sound like a broken record, but again, there's 30 studies in the last 15 years, more like 20 years, saying municipalities would benefit from this. I hear people saying the opposite, but show me the 30 studies that say that. And just so that's the big positive. I would think right there. And I just want to make a kind of a general comment that a lot of what I've heard today has been along the lines of, well, it wouldn't be perfect, so let's not do it. And everybody's heard the phrase, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. If this is a good thing, we should do it. Of course, it's not going to be perfect, and we're going to have to make it work for New Jersey. But as I said before, the bill is not written yet, so we could write a bottle bill the way we want it to be.
John, I have a question on the studies, and I have not read any of the 30 studies. Do you know if any of those studies, in doing their analysis, started with the New Jersey model that has certain economic pieces built in where we currently are? Did they compare where New Jersey model brings us to what would happen if a bottle bill is added? Or
No,
did
Beth,
they start from
no.
a blank slate and just say with a blank slate, a bottle bill is good for municipalities economically?
Okay,
Like, what was their starting
Sure.
point?
My understanding, they studied what exists. So again, as I mentioned, these are from bottle bill states looking to upgrade their bottle bill, Canadian cities, Canadian provinces. So they didn't study New Jersey, they studied their situation. And there's countries in the EU, out of the EU. So they're all looking at their own situation. So that's
analyzing each situation. So each of the 30 studies could be a little bit different.
Yeah, that's the thing. That ReLoop compiled 30 different studies, and they're all, coming to the same conclusion.
Once again, we're talking apples to oranges here, folks. 30 studies not conducted in New Jersey, studies that include studies that were done in the EU. If we want to scrap a capitalistic system of government that we have here in the United States, believe me, I'd be all for that. If we wanted to move to a more socialistic system of government like they have in the EU, where the government will force the extended producer responsibility on these companies like they do in Europe and force them to pay for these things, I mean, I'd be the first person in line to sign up for that. But until we get the money out of politics, until we have a legitimate government that we can trust to act in the best interest of our people and not of corporate profits, I find it very difficult that we're going to be able to get to that same end result.
Janine, would you like to weigh in on economics at the state level?
I don't really think I have anything to add other than what I said for the first one, the first question, the bottles diverted, they would take some money away from the Class A recycling facilities, decrease profits, increase cost for recycling, for a chain reaction. It's one model. I'm not saying it's the only answer. It's the only way it's going to happen. It could happen that way depending on how the bill is written. So, we keep saying without a bill, it's really hard to evaluate it. But even with the bill, it's really hard to evaluate it. Even if we had a draft bill, you don't know exactly what's going to happen. There's no economic, predictions and stuff like that. It's very difficult. I mean, someone in the comments said, "Oh, you get 100 million or something from this law," but that's got to be also used to run the program. I guess I think some of the things I've seen, some laws, it goes to administer the program at the stores, possibly in the supporting the government, and then maybe supporting like John's example of the excess unclaimed rebates to go to maybe to the counties, municipalities. Don't know how it's written. Can't really say 100% what would happen. These questions are just things we need to consider, I believe, if future legislation comes our way.
Alan, I'm not sure it was true that this was going to be a short panel. That's the last of the questions we developed ahead of the meeting. So I'd like to ask if there's any PAC member. Oh wait, John wants to say something.
Yeah,
if there's any PAC member who wants to ask any other questions.
Really quick, I just put in the chat a little bit a while the link to the reloop compilation of the 30 studies, so people have that. And the second thing, and this is an unanswered question on my part. I mean, I just got these detailed numbers from my own town, since that's what I'm supposed to be talking about. I cannot account for the absolute wild swings in the amount of money that it costs us to deal with, for example, single stream recycling. And somebody needs to answer this for us. For example, we were taking our single stream recycling to one facility very recently and paying $120 a ton to get rid of our single stream recycling. Okay. We looked around and we are now taking it to a different facility at a cost of $40 a ton. So, the $80 a ton swing for single stream recycling, it's like somebody has to figure this out. Or why is it like that? Is there price gouging? Is somebody operating their facility at a loss? Like, I have no idea, but this is what towns are dealing with. And I feel like the secrecy and on the part of recyclers or processors or whatever you want to call them, like, I think some of this stuff needs to get out in the open, and then we could really have more meaningful discussions about this stuff. But, I mean, for my town, we're going to keep taking it to the cheap place, but why the $80 swing per ton? It's very hard to answer. And thank you for that.
Christina, are there any PAC members who have their hands up to ask any questions? No.
You're on mute, Christine.
I'm sorry. No, there are no hands up, so it doesn't appear we have any other questions. Do you want to go to a break before the public comment period?
I'd just like to thank these panel members. This has been a very lively discussion. Thank you for sharing your perspective with all of us. We'll take a quick break, a 7-minute break, and then we come back at 3 o'clock and we will introduce Diane Gard, who will lead the 2-hour public comment session. Thank you all.